I stood on the edge of the Shawangunk Ridge, the December wind cutting through my skin. Below, the Hudson River flowed silently through the mist-covered valley. Breathtakingly beautiful, but terrifyingly cold. Behind me, I heard the sound of heels echoing on the stone. "Mom, you shouldn't stand so close to the edge," Brianna's voice rang out, soft as a breeze. But I clearly heard another layer beneath it. Something cold, slick, and calculated. "The view here is stunning," she continued, her eyes focused on the deep ravine. "People say this place used to have a lot of accidents. Old people slipping, falling. No one ever knew if it was an accident or something else." I turned to look at her. In the late afternoon light, Brianna's face suddenly looked unsettlingly unfamiliar. This wasn't the first time she had said strange things like that, but it was the first time I genuinely felt afraid. 2 days later, I woke up in Vassar Brothers Medical Center, my leg in a cast, my whole body aching. Nurse Sienna Patel said, "Mrs. Davis, you're very lucky. Your neighbor found you lying at the bottom of the stairs. Another hour and it would have been difficult to save you." But the strange thing was, I didn't remember falling. The only thing lingering in my mind was Brianna's whisper in my ear, just before I lost consciousness. "It should have been over, but you're stronger than I thought." If you are watching this video, please hit subscribe so you don't miss the true stories that force us to re-examine trust, family ties, and the boundary between love and betrayal. And tell me, if it were you, hearing those words from your daughter-in-law on a cliff edge, what would you do? Because the story I'm about to tell is how a 72-year-old woman survived her own daughter-in-law's scheme and uncovered a secret that shattered the entire family. My name is Laverne Davis, and this is the story of how I almost died in the very house I had lived in for 45 years. To understand why I am lying in this hospital bed, I need to tell you about Brianna Cole, the woman my son Jamal married 3 years ago. The first time I met her, I thought I had won the lottery. It was an autumn afternoon in 2021, and Jamal brought Brianna home in New Paltz. I was baking apple pie, a recipe passed down from the Davis family grandmother. The scent of cinnamon and melted butter wafted throughout the kitchen. Through the window, I saw the two of them pull up. Brianna stepped out of Jamal's old Honda Civic, wearing a pale blue floral dress. Her hair was pulled up, revealing a round face, big eyes, and a smile. Ah, that smile. At the time, I believed it was genuine. Now I understand. It was something practiced. "Mom Davis." She ran over and hugged me before Jamal could even introduce her. "I've heard so much about you. Jamal talks about your apple pie all the time." I laughed, patting her back gently. "Come in, dear. You're just in time for the pie to be ready." During afternoon tea that day, Brianna sat at the oak dining table, the table Otis, my husband, built himself when we first got married. She asked me about the pie recipe, the backyard garden, and the family photos hanging on the wall. "Is this little Jamal?" She pointed at a picture of the 7-year-old with 2 missing teeth, hugging his pet dog. "He's adorable." Jamal sat next to her, holding Brianna's hand, looking at her as if she were the whole world. My son, the child I used to stay up all night rocking when he had a fever, the one I taught to ride a bike on the dirt road behind the house, was now 35 and in love. My heart was full of happiness. After Brianna left, Jamal stayed behind to help me clean up. "Did you like her, Mom?" His voice was as anxious as when he brought home a report card as a child. I wiped my hands on my apron, smiling. "I like her. She's very sweet." "You know," he looked down the road Brianna had just driven away on, "I think she's the one I'm going to marry." My heart skipped a beat, not out of sadness, but a very motherly joy mixed with fear that I would no longer be the most important woman in my son's life. But I said, "Then I'm happy for you." And at that time, I truly was happy. In the following months, Brianna became a part of our lives. She visited every week, always bringing a small gift, a lavender plant, a box of Earl Grey tea, an antique cookbook. "I found this at a thrift store. I thought you'd like it." She handed me a 1975 edition of The Joy of Cooking, the exact year Otis and I got married. She helped me garden on Saturday mornings. We knelt side by side on the damp soil, planting tomatoes and basil. Brianna told me about her childhood in Poughkeepsie, 3 sisters in a small house near the Hudson River. "My family was very poor, Mom. Some nights my parents argued over money, and I had to cover my ears. My eldest sister, Mabel, dropped out of school to work and support the family." I placed my hand on her shoulder. "You got through it. Now you have Jamal, you have us." She looked up, her eyes shining. "You are the luckiest woman I know. A warm family, this house, this garden, and love." "You'll have those things too," I said. Brianna smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I hope so." The wedding took place in the spring of 2022 at Holy Trinity Church, the small church on the hill where Otis and I had exchanged vows 47 years earlier. The ceremony was simple, just family and close friends. Brianna wore a plain white dress she found at a thrift store. "I don't want to spend Jamal's money," she explained when trying on the dress. "We're saving up to buy a house." I hugged her, feeling proud. "You are so sensible." During the ceremony, when Jamal kissed his bride, I cried. Otis sat beside me, holding my hand. He was 74, and his health was failing, but that day he smiled radiantly. "Are you satisfied now?" he whispered. "You know me." I wiped my tears. "I just want my child to be happy." "He is happy. Just look at his face." It was true. Jamal looked at Brianna as if she were the sun, the moon, and all the stars. The first month after the wedding, everything remained perfect. The two rented a small apartment in Poughkeepsie, near the hospital where Jamal worked as a lab technician. Brianna still visited me every week, helping with shopping, cleaning, and taking care of Otis as his health declined. Then one afternoon, everything started to change. I was hanging clothes outside. Brianna arrived unannounced, something she had never done before. Her face was flushed, her eyes strangely bright. "Mom!" She ran over and hugged me tightly. "I have great news!" "What news, dear?" "I'm pregnant!" My heart soared. A grandchild. After years of hoping, I was finally going to be a grandmother. "Oh my goodness," I hugged her back. "I'm so happy." "Does Jamal know yet?" "I'll tell him tonight. But I wanted you to be the first to know." We stood in the yard, amidst the clothes swaying in the breeze, hugging and laughing. I didn't know that was the last time I would truly be happy with Brianna, because 3 days later, Otis passed away. My husband died suddenly one June night. His heart stopped at 3 a.m. I woke up, feeling the cold emptiness beside me. My cries woke the entire neighborhood. Jamal and Brianna rushed over. My son hugged me, crying like a child. Brianna stood at the bedroom door, her face pale. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she whispered. The following days passed like a nightmare. The funeral at Holy Trinity Church, friends and relatives, condolences I barely remembered. The coffin was lowered into the cemetery on the hill overlooking the Hudson, the river Otis loved. I stood by his grave, empty. 47 years together. Now I was alone. Brianna came close, placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone. I'm still here." I nodded, unable to speak. But amidst the funeral, I noticed something strange. Brianna stood in a distant corner, talking on the phone. Her face was serious, her voice tense. As soon as she saw me look, she hung up immediately and smiled. "Do you need anything, Mom?" Her voice was sweet as honey. "No, dear. I'm fine." Inside me, a small bell began to ring, the warning bell that older women learn to hear after a lifetime. Something wasn't right. 2 weeks after the funeral, Brianna visited with a proposition. We sat in the living room. the room suddenly too large and too silent without Otis. The afternoon sun shone through the window, highlighting the armchair where he used to sit and read the newspaper. I couldn't look at it without wanting to cry. "Mom," Brianna started, sitting close to me. "Jamal and I have talked. You shouldn't live alone in this big house." I looked at her, confused. "Why do you say that?" "You're 72 now. If something happens, no one is here to help." "Are you worried about me?" "I'm still healthy." She smiled, a smile that made me uneasy. "I know you're healthy. But this house, it holds too many memories. It will only make you sad." I glanced around the room, my and Otis's wedding photo on the mantelpiece, the old piano Jamal learned on as a child, the oak table in the kitchen. Every corner held a piece of memory. "This is my home, Brianna. I can't leave." "I understand." She placed her hand on mine. Her hand was cold. "But what do you think about having us move in? My husband and I are renting, and the baby is coming soon. If we move in here, you won't be lonely, and I can easily take care of you." I hesitated. On one hand, the idea of having my son and daughter-in-law live with me warmed my heart. On the other, a part of me, the part I didn't want to admit, felt unsettled. "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course." Brianna stood up. "Take your time. No rush." But the way she glanced around the room, her gaze calculating, measuring, sent a chill down my spine. That was the first time I wondered, had I been wrong about Brianna? If you are listening up to this point and want to follow the full story, please hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. And you, if you were me, caught between the loneliness after the funeral and that sweet offer to move in together, would you agree? Or would you also hear that small bell ringing like I did? Jamal and Brianna moved into the house in August, just as the New Paltz summer was scorching hot. I stood in the hallway watching them carry their belongings up to the second-floor bedroom, the room that used to be Jamal's when he was a child, where old Nick's posters were still taped to the wall. "Mom, where should I put this mirror?" Brianna asked, holding a large, gold-framed mirror, her face flushed from the heat, her 4-month pregnant belly quite round. "Put it where you like," I said. "It's your room now." She hung the mirror on the wall, right over the growth chart where Otis used to mark Jamal's height each year. As the chart was obscured, a tiny pang of pain pierced my chest. The first week, everything was fine. We ate dinner together. Brianna cooked dishes she learned from her mother: Southern-style fried chicken, mashed potatoes, smooth gravy. Jamal sat next to her, telling stories from the hospital. "We had an emergency case today," he said, taking a bite of chicken. "An 80-year-old man fell off his bike. I ran the tests." "Honey," Brianna interrupted, her voice gentle but with a hard edge to it. "I don't think Mom wants to hear about the hospital." "Right, Mom?" I was surprised. "No, I like hearing Jamal's stories." "But Mom just lost Dad," Brianna smiled sadly. "Mentioning old people falling, it might bring back memories." Jamal turned to me, concerned. "Are you okay, Mom?" "I'm fine." I placed my hand on his. "Keep going." But Brianna had already changed the topic to the baby's room. Jamal followed her lead. The story about his shift vanished from the dinner table. That was the first small change. I didn't dwell on it much. Not then. The second change came one Saturday morning. I woke up at 6 as usual and went down to the kitchen to make coffee. I opened the cabinet. All the blue-patterned cups and mugs I had used for 20 years were gone. In their place was a brand-new, plain white set. "Brianna?" I called. She came downstairs wearing a pink bathrobe, her hair in a loose bun. "Yes, Mom?" "Where are my cups, dear?" "Oh, I forgot to mention." She tapped her forehead lightly. "The old ones were chipped, dangerous. I bought a new set for the whole family to use. But they weren't chipped. Brianna stepped closer, placing her hand on my shoulder. Maybe you didn't notice. I inspected them carefully. Many had hairline cracks, easy to get hurt drinking from them. I'm just worried about you. I searched her eyes for a hint of something else. I only saw concern. Well, thank you. But as she turned around, I caught her reflection in the glass of the window, and a smile that was hard to define. The following week, I discovered my bedroom key was missing. I searched the drawers, the dressing table, my purse. Nowhere. What are you looking for, Mom? Brianna stood at the door, holding a stack of freshly washed towels. My bedroom key. Don't worry, Mom. She walked in, placing the towels on the bed. We're family, no need for locks. I'm used to locking the door when I sleep. That's an old habit, isn't it, Mom? She sat down next to me. Now that Jamal and I are here. What if you needed help at night, or slipped and fell? How would we get in if the door was locked? The reasoning sounded plausible, but why did I feel so uneasy? I see your point, I replied slowly. Then take a rest. Brianna stood up, patting my shoulder gently. I'm going downstairs to make dinner. That night, I lay looking at the unlocked door. Moonlight through the curtains drew thin shadows on the wall. In the silence, there was the sound of footsteps in the hallway. They paused right outside my door. A person's shadow briefly appeared beneath the sliver of light at the bottom of the door. Who's there? I called out, my throat dry. The shadow vanished. The footsteps quickly retreated. The next morning, I asked Jamal, Did you go out into the hallway last night? No, Mom. I slept the whole time. Why? Nothing. Nothing at all. Inside me, the alarm bell was no longer quiet. It was ringing loudly. September arrived, along with my 72nd birthday. Jamal asked how I wanted to celebrate. I want to invite my 2 sisters, Mabel and Thelma. Yes, Mom, I'll call them. But on the day, there were only 3 of us. I waited from morning until afternoon. Mabel and Thelma didn't show up. Did you call your aunts? I asked. I did, Mom. Jamal glanced at Brianna, who was slicing the cake in the kitchen. Aunt Mabel said she was busy. An unexpected thing came up. That evening, I called them myself. Sister, why didn't you come to my birthday? What are you talking about? Mabel's voice was surprised. No one called to invite us. I thought you weren't having one this year because you'd just lost Otis. I was stunned. I hung up and sat still in the dark room. Jamal said he called. Mabel said no one called. Who was lying? In the weeks that followed, I started paying attention, and what I saw sent a chill down my spine. Brianna was changing everything. Slowly, meticulously, like someone erasing the traces of a person who once lived here. My and Otis's photo on the mantelpiece was moved. So we can put the baby's photo there later, Mom. Otis's armchair suddenly disappeared. It was too old. I donated it. The plants I planted in the garden slowly withered. I water them regularly. The soil must not be good. Every day, I felt myself fade away in my own house, as if Brianna was slowly replacing me with her own version. One night, I accidentally overheard a conversation I shouldn't have. Thirsty, I went down to the kitchen, pausing on the stairs when I heard the 2 of them talking in the living room. You have to understand. Brianna's voice was low and urgent. I can't live with your mother forever. This house is too big, and your mother needs more care. What do you mean? Jamal sounded tired. We should find a better place for Mom. A place with professional care. My mother is 72. She's still healthy. But don't you see? The other day, she forgot to turn off the stove. Last week, she couldn't remember her key. What if something happens? My mother is not losing her memory. I didn't say that. Brianna's voice softened, the way one coaxes a child. I'm worried about Mom. Worried about you, too. I'm pregnant, and I need you beside me. Are you making me choose between you and my mother? The silence was heavy as lead. I stood in the dark, my heart pounding. No, Brianna finally said. I just want what's best, even for your mother. I went back up to my room, no longer thirsty. Lying down, looking at the ceiling, I realized Brianna was trying to push me out of my own home. But why? The question haunted me for days. She had everything. A good husband, a baby on the way, a warm house. What more could she want? One afternoon I found the answer. I was cleaning upstairs, Brianna and Jamal's room. She was working her part-time job at a clothing store. Jamal was on duty at the hospital. I only intended to vacuum and change the sheets. As I flipped the blanket, a piece of paper slipped out from under Brianna's pillow. It was a printed title, Property Value in New Paltz, New York, 2024. A list of estimated house prices in the area. At the bottom of the page, in Brianna's handwriting, 2,847 Maple Street, estimated at about $580,000. If sold, after taxes and fees, about $520,000 remaining, enough to buy a new house and still have money left over. My hands shook. I reread it many times, hoping I misread it. I hadn't. Brianna was calculating the money from my house. She was planning to sell it. I sank onto the bed, the paper still in my hand. Everything suddenly became clear. That was why she wanted me to move out. That was why she told Jamal I needed professional care. If I left, Jamal would inherit the house. And with Jamal, that meant with Brianna. She would sell it, take the money, and erase all traces of the Davis family. In the silent room, something broke inside me. Not anger, not fear, but the pain of betrayal. The woman I once loved like a daughter. The person I shared my pie recipe with, knelt with in the garden, and hugged at Otis's funeral. That very person was plotting to take everything. Just then, I heard a key turn in the front door. Footsteps seemed to stop right outside the room threshold. I gripped the paper tightly, my heart racing. If it was Brianna, what should I do? Hide it? Confront her? Or pretend I hadn't seen anything? I silently counted 3 breaths. I decided to remain silent, because sometimes silence is the only way to hear the truth approach. Have you seen the pieces start to fit together? In the next part, I will tell you how I tested my memory, and why just one small detail in the kitchen exposed Brianna's plan. I didn't say anything to Jamal about the paper. How could I? Son, your wife is pricing my house to sell it. He would think I was imagining things, or worse, think I was jealous of Brianna. Instead, I started to watch. I watched the way Brianna's eyes scanned the house like a shopper, the way she measured the rooms with her gaze. I watched the interior design magazines she flipped through, folding the corners of pages filled with new, cold, empty houses. October arrived, the leaves turning brilliant gold and orange. Every morning, I sat by the window looking out at the garden Otis had tended for 20 years. The apple trees planted when Jamal was small, the old swing still hanging from the oak tree. "Are you going to sit sentimentally all day, Mom?" Brianna's voice rang out behind me. I jumped and turned around. She stood at the doorway, wearing a blue maternity dress, her 6-month pregnant belly fully round, holding a cup of tea. "I'm just watching the garden, dear." "The garden is heading into winter," Brianna sat opposite me. "What's left to see?" "Still a lot," I said softly. "To me, there is." We were silent. The atmosphere in the room was heavy, like before a storm. "Mom," Brianna started, her voice sounding cautious, "I want to talk about the future, about this house." "What is it, dear? Have you ever thought about downsizing?" She took a sip of tea. "This house is too big for one person. 6 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a large yard. It's too much for you to maintain. I'm used to it. But you're not young anymore." Her voice was gentle but concealed a knife edge. "Last week you nearly fell down the stairs. Last month you forgot to turn off the stove. And the key incident." "Are you suggesting I'm frail?" "No, Mom." Brianna placed her hand on her abdomen, the unconscious gesture of a pregnant woman. "I'm just saying you need a safer place. somewhere with care available in case something happens. I looked her straight in the eye. "You want me to move out, don't you?" Brianna didn't blink. "I want what's best for you." "And what's best for your daughter-in-law, Brianna?" Her face briefly changed, a slight frown, a barely noticeable clench of her jaw. Then the smile returned. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do." I stood up and walked toward the door. "But you should remember, this is my house. I'm not going anywhere." That night, I didn't sleep. Lying in bed, I listened to the strange sounds of the house: creaking windows, wind seeping through the cracks, light footsteps in the hallway. Or was it just the imagination of a frightened old woman? At 2 a.m, there was a sound downstairs, metal clanging. I crept down the stairs, my heart pounding. The kitchen light was on. Through the crack in the door, I saw Brianna standing at the medicine cabinet, rummaging through the blood pressure pill bottles my doctor prescribed. "Brianna?" I pushed the door open and stepped in. She started, dropping the bottle onto the counter. "Mom!" "You scared me." "What are you doing here?" "I couldn't sleep. I have a headache." She pointed to the aspirin bottle. "I was going to get some medicine." "The aspirin is in the top cabinet, not here." I pointed to the cabinet on the left. "Where you were rummaging is my medication." "Oh." Brianna laughed, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought they were kept together." "I'm sorry." She poured water, took a pill, and went upstairs. I opened the cabinet to check. The cap of the blood pressure bottle was open, though I was sure I had closed it tightly that morning. I counted. 3 pills were missing. My hands shook. I take 1 pill a day. 3 pills at once could cause a severe drop in blood pressure, fainting, or worse. I dumped the remaining pills onto the counter, looking under the kitchen light. Was I being paranoid, or did I misremember? Deep down, I knew. I hadn't misremembered. The next morning, I called Mabel. "Sister, I need your help with something." "What is it, Laverne?" "You sound tense." I looked out the window, sure Brianna was still upstairs. "I can't talk over the phone. Can you come over?" "Right now?" "As soon as possible." Who was that person, and why, after this meeting, could I no longer sleep peacefully in my own house? Mabel arrived an hour later. She was 75, tall and slender, her gray hair neatly tied back. Stepping into the house, she looked around, her eyes showing concern. "Where is Brianna?" "At work." "Jamal is at the hospital. Just the 2 of us." We sat in the living room. I told her everything: the small changes, the house valuation paper, the missing pills, the footsteps at night. Mabel listened silently. When I finished, she looked down at her coffee cup for a long time. "I know this sounds crazy." "No," Mabel interrupted. "Not crazy at all." "You believe me?" "I do." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "Because I also sensed something was wrong with her before. The way she looks at you, talks about the house. At Otis's funeral, I overheard her talking on the phone about assets and inheritance. I thought I misheard at the time. So what should I do?" Mabel squeezed my hand. "Be careful. Very careful. If she is truly planning something, you are not safe in this house." "But this is my home." "I can't just leave." "Then protect yourself." "Do you have any evidence?" "I have the house valuation paper, but I left it in Brianna's room." "You must find it back. And write down everything. What she does, what she says. If something happens, you need proof." "What something?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Whatever she is planning," Mabel whispered. "Whatever it is." The following week, I started keeping notes. A small black notebook hidden under my mattress. 1 line a day. October 15th. Brianna asked about the house deed, whose name it was under. I said mine and Otis's, no transfer yet. 10 of 18. Found a nursing home catalog in the living room drawer. Not mine. Brianna's handwritten note. Greenvale Senior Living, $4,500 per month. Accepts Medicare, 10/21. Brianna suggested I should see a lawyer to arrange the will. Said Mom should prepare so Jamal doesn't have to worry. 10/25, almost fell down the stairs. I'm sure I saw a string stretched across the third step. When Jamal rushed out, there was nothing. Brianna asked, "Are you hallucinating, Mom?" Each line was a piece of the puzzle. The resulting picture sent shivers down my spine. Then came November 2nd, the day everything changed. Brianna suggested a walk at Mohonk Preserve on the Shawangunk Ridge. "Fresh air is good for you, Mom." I didn't want to go, but Jamal pleaded, "Mom, you haven't left the house all week. Come with us, please." We drove in the afternoon. The sky was darkening. The winter wind howled cold. Jamal had to stop at a gas station to take an urgent call from the hospital. "You go on," Brianna said. "Mom and I will just take the short trail." I wanted to object, but I didn't want to worry my son with my suspicions. We entered the woods. Brianna walked ahead. I followed. The dirt path wound between oaks and pines. The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy, dappling the ground. "Can you walk faster, Mom?" Brianna said. "I want to catch the sunset at the ridge." "You're pregnant. Don't climb too high." "I'm fine. The doctor said exercise is good." We continued. The path became steeper. I was breathing heavily, my heart racing. Then the trees opened up. Ahead was the cliff edge, Shawangunk Ridge. I stood close to the edge, looking down at the distant Hudson River. The wind whipped strongly, and I had to hold on to a nearby tree trunk. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Brianna's voice rang out behind me. I turned around. She stood a few steps away, her face expressionless. "Dear, we should go back. It's getting dark." "Wait a minute." She stepped closer. Too close. "Do you know anything about your will?" "Why are you asking?" "Because I think you should transfer the house deed to Jamal, to avoid complications later." "Brianna." "Or maybe," she took another step, "you won't need to worry about that anymore." In that exact moment, I understood. Looking into her cold, empty eyes, I understood why she brought me here. "You shouldn't stand so close," Brianna said, her voice light as if discussing the weather. "They say there are many accidents here. Old people slip. No one ever knows if it's an accident or something else." I stepped back. Behind me was the cliff. In front was Brianna. And I knew I was standing on the boundary between life and death. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. I could clearly hear the wind whistling through the cliff face, the distant sound of the Hudson River below, and the drumming of my own heart in my ears. "Brianna," I tried to keep my voice calm, "what are you doing?" She tilted her head, as if observing an interesting specimen. "I'm just helping you, Mom. Helping everyone. Helping by pushing me off a cliff." "Not pushing." Brianna took another step closer. "It's an accident. An old woman out for a walk, loses her balance, slips, a tragedy. But things like this, they happen often here." I glanced around. Not a soul in sight. The trail was deserted. Jamal was still stuck at the gas station, at least 2 kilometers away. "Jamal will know," I said. "My son isn't stupid. Jamal loves me." Brianna's voice was soft, stating the obvious. "He will be sad, of course. But then he'll have me. I'll be there, comforting him, and slowly he'll understand that this was for the best." "Best for whom?" "For everyone." She placed a hand on her stomach. "You're old, Laverne. How much longer do you have? 5 years? 10 years? For all that time, you'll be a burden. Jamal has to take care of you, worry about you, spend money that should go to my family." "You're talking about money? Not just money." Brianna shook her head. "It's about love, attention, everything Jamal gives you, things that should belong to me." And then I understood. It wasn't just the house. It wasn't just the money. It was the one thing Brianna always craved, but never felt she had enough of: being everything in someone's life. "You're jealous of me," I whispered. "Jealous." Brianna let out a laugh, sharp as a needle. "No, Mom. I hate you. I hate the way Jamal looks at you, the way he says, 'My mom taught me this, my mom said that,' every single day, as if you're a saint." Her voice trembled, but her face remained cold. "When I was little, my mother was never home. She worked 3 jobs to raise 4 kids. Some days I didn't see her face. My sister Mabel cooked, took me to school, hugged me when I was scared, and my mother, a tired stranger sleeping on the sofa. Then I met Jamal. I thought I finally had a real family, a husband who loved me more than anyone. But no, there was always Mom standing in the middle." "Brianna," I said softly, "I never wanted to stand between you and Jamal." "But you did." She wiped a tear, leaving a streak of mascara on her cheek. "Every decision had to be, ask Mom. Which house to buy? Ask Mom. What to name the baby? Ask Mom. Where to go on vacation? Ask Mom. I was just a shadow, and you were the light." I looked at the woman in front of me, no longer my daughter-in-law, but a wounded child, grown up with an insatiable thirst for love. "I'm sorry," I said genuinely. "Sorry for what you went through. But Brianna, this isn't the way to solve it. There is no other way." She stepped closer again. "I tried. I shared. But you took it all. So now I'm taking it back. My heels were right at the edge of the cliff. One wrong step, and I would fall. If you do this, you'll lose everything. Jamal will know. He'll never know." Brianna raised her hand. "And even if he suspects, he can't prove it. I planned everything meticulously. The time you fell down the stairs. The string was removed. Your medication. I put it in your food, not enough to kill, just enough to make you dizzy, so everyone believes you're losing your mind. And this accident, it's perfect. No witnesses." She smiled. "I learned from crime shows on TV. You know, most criminals get caught because they rush. But I don't. I'm patient." "Brianna, you're pregnant. Are you going to commit murder right in front of your own child?" Her face stiffened. "The baby isn't conscious yet. It won't remember. But you will." For a split second, Brianna's eyes wavered. A flicker of doubt, a moment of hesitation. Then it was gone. "I can live with that," she said, and she pushed me. I don't know how I did it. Instinct or a miracle? The moment Brianna's hand touched my shoulder, I grabbed her wrist. She stumbled. Both of us swayed toward the cliff. "Mom!" Brianna screamed. I yanked her backward, away from the cliff edge. We tumbled onto the ground, tangled in a strange embrace between the rescuer and the near killer. We lay there, gasping for breath. The evening sky was blood red. In the distance, someone was calling, "Mom!" "Brianna! Jamal!" My son was running along the trail, his face pale. "We're here!" I managed to call out, my voice weak. Jamal rushed over, kneeling beside us. "What happened? Are you okay?" I looked at Brianna. She looked back. In her eyes was fear. Not fear of what I would say, but fear of herself, fear of what she had almost done. I almost fell," Brianna said, her voice trembling. "Mom saved me." Jamal hugged his wife. "Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" I don't know." Brianna cried, shaking uncontrollably. I wasn't sure if she was crying from fear of losing the baby or from remorse. We headed back to the car. Jamal helped Brianna. I walked behind, my hands still shaking. The whole way, no one spoke. Brianna sat in the back seat, facing the window. I sat next to Jamal, feeling heavy as lead. "Are you sure you're okay, Mom?" Jamal looked at me in the rearview mirror. "I'm fine, dear." But I wasn't fine. In my head, the scene played over and over. If I hadn't grabbed her in time, if we had both fallen, if Jamal had arrived a few minutes later. And I thought about what Brianna said. The pain of a motherless child, the desperate need to be everything in someone's life, and the despair that could turn a young woman into a killer. That night, Jamal took Brianna to the hospital for a checkup, just to make sure the baby is okay. I was at home, alone. Sitting in the dark living room, I didn't turn on the lights. Darkness enveloped me, with only the moonlight filtering through the window frame. I missed Otis. If he were alive, would things be different? Would he have seen through Brianna sooner than I did, or would he have been fooled too? The phone rang. Mabel was calling. "Laverne? Are you okay? I've been uneasy all day." I told her everything. The trip up Shawangunk Ridge, Brianna's words, the embrace between life and death. When I finished, the other end of the line was silent. "You have to leave that house," Mabel finally said. "Right now." "I can't abandon Jamal." "Jamal is an adult. As for you, you will die if you stay. She tried once, she will try again." "No." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. "I think today, something changed. Brianna is scared. She knows what she almost did. Or she's just scared of being exposed." Mabel's voice was firm. "You're too kind, Laverne." "You always are, but some people don't deserve your kindness." "So what do you want me to do? Tell Jamal his wife tried to kill me? He'll think I'm crazy." "Then find proof, and prepare to protect yourself." After hanging up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about proof, about the notebook hidden under the mattress, and if Brianna was truly dangerous, I needed a plan. If the law can protect me before the truth is buried, I must act now. 2 days later, I went to see a lawyer. Attorney Penelope Shaw had a small office near the Dutchess County Courthouse. She was about 45, with brown hair and a ponytail, sharp eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. "How can I help you, Mrs. Davis?" Penelope asked as I sat down. "I want to amend my will." "Of course." "Do you have the current version?" "Yes. My husband and I did it together in 2010. In it, when I pass away, everything is left to Jamal." "And you want to change that?" I hesitated. "I want to protect my assets." Penelope leaned forward. "I've been in this profession for 20 years. I realize people come here for more than just paperwork. Are you in trouble?" I looked at this stranger and weighed whether I could trust her. "If I tell you a story," I said slowly, "will you keep it confidential?" Everything between an attorney and client is confidential. So I told her. Not everything. I didn't mention the cliff yet, but I talked about the small changes, the house valuation paper, the pressure to make me move out. Penelope listened without interruption. When I stopped, she wrote a few lines. "Mrs. Davis, you need more than a wills lawyer. You need protection right now while you're still alive." "How?" "Establish a trust, a living trust. Put the house into the trust, with you as the lifetime beneficiary. When you pass away, the assets are distributed according to your wishes, but while you're alive, no one can touch it." "Not even my son?" "Not even Jamal, and certainly not your daughter-in-law." She looked at me seriously. "I don't know what's going on in your house. But if you feel unsafe, there are legal steps we can take. I don't want to hurt my son. Protecting yourself is not hurting others. That is your right." I looked out the window, toward the courthouse across the street. "Let me think about it. Please don't think too long. If something happens." She didn't need to finish. We both understood. That evening, when I got home, Brianna was cooking. The smell of stew lingered in the air. She stood by the stove, stirring a pot of soup, her 7-month belly round. "Where have you been, Mom?" she asked without turning around. Visiting an old friend. Ah. Silence. Then, Mom, I want to talk to you. My heart sped up. About what? Brianna turned off the stove and turned around. Her face was pale, her eyes red as if she had been crying. About the other day. On the hill, the air was thick. I stood still, waiting. I'm sorry, she whispered. Those two words fell between us, heavy as stones. I'm sorry for everything, she continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. You were right. I'm jealous. I'm angry. I wanted things that weren't mine, and I almost... She choked, only able to cry. I looked at my daughter-in-law, the person who almost killed me less than a week ago. And a strange feeling arose within me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding of pain, of loneliness, of how hurt can turn people into monsters. Brianna, I said softly, you need help. She looked up. I know. Not from me, from a professional, someone who can help you understand why you feel this way. You want me to see a therapist? I want you to heal, for yourself, for Jamal, and for the baby. Brianna wiped her tears, placing a hand on her stomach. If I do that, will you stay? Will you not leave us? I looked deep into her eyes, searching for sincerity. Do you truly want to change? I do. Her voice was firmer. I don't want to be the person I was that day anymore. I'm afraid of myself, Mom. In that voice, I heard something real. Fear, remorse. Maybe, just maybe, there was still hope. Then we will help you, I said. But deep down, I knew I would never be completely safe in this house again. November passed in an unusual silence. Brianna started seeing a therapist, Dr. Rachel Morrison, a middle-aged woman with a clinic in Poughkeepsie. 3 sessions a week, Jamal took his wife, and each time she returned, Brianna was more exhausted. It's hard, she said one evening when we were sitting in the kitchen. Dr. Morrison makes me recall things I've tried to forget for years. Like what? I poured tea for both of us. About my mother. About growing up without anyone to lean on. Brianna gazed into her teacup, her voice distant. I remember when I was 8, I had a high fever. My mother was on the night shift. My sister Mabel gave me medicine and a cold cloth. I kept calling Mom, Mom. Mabel cried and said, "Call me." But I didn't want her. I wanted my mother. She wiped a tear. The doctor said I carried that pain my whole life. Then I met Jamal, a man who loved his mother unconditionally, and I became jealous, because I never had that. I placed my hand on hers. I understand. Do you really understand? Brianna looked up, her eyes red. Do you know what it feels like to see others have what you crave, and then want to destroy it just because you can't have it? I don't understand that feeling, I said honestly, but I understand pain. And I know pain can drive people to do unimaginable things. We sat in silence, sipping tea. Outside the window, the first snowflakes of the season began to fall. I'm due in January, Brianna whispered. The doctor said the baby is healthy. I'm happy for you. I want to name the baby Otis, she said unexpectedly. If it's a boy, to honor Dad. My heart caught in my throat. He would be so pleased. Mom, Brianna hesitated. I know I don't deserve it, after everything I've done, but when the baby is born, can you teach me how to be a mother? I'm afraid I'll be like my mother, afraid I'll damage the baby. I looked into her eyes, seeing genuine fear. You won't damage the baby. You've recognized your problem. That's the first step. That night, lying in bed, I still wondered, could I trust Brianna? Or was it all just an act? A longer, more elaborate plan. On November 28th, it happened. I woke up at 6 a.m., the street lights still casting a faint glow through the curtains. I went down to the kitchen to make coffee, carefully placing my feet on the old wooden steps. The third step from the bottom creaked as usual. I placed my foot on the fourth step, and the stair gave way. I had no time to react. My right foot sank through the broken gap, and I lost my balance. I stumbled, lunged for the railing, but slipped. Then I fell, tumbling head first down the stairs. The impact with the hardwood floor was the last thing I remembered. When I woke up, I was in a white room with a strong smell of disinfectant. A machine beeped steadily near my ear. "Mom? Are you awake?" Jamal's voice, full of worry. I struggled to open my eyes. The light was harsh. My son sat by the bed, his face gaunt, his beard scruffy, as if he hadn't shaved in days. "Son, where are we?" "Vassar Brothers Medical Center, Mom. You fell down the stairs. It's been 2 days." "2 days?" I tried to piece together my memory, my mind hazy. Nurse Sienna Patel walked in, a young Indian nurse with long dark hair, a warm smile. "Mrs. Davis, you're awake. How do you feel?" "Painful." I tried to move, but my body wouldn't obey. Pain all over. "You have a fractured hip and a broken left collarbone." Sienna checked the machine. "Luckily, no severe head trauma. But you'll have to stay in the hospital for a while." "What happened?" Jamal held my hand. "Brianna found you at 6:30. You were lying at the bottom of the stairs, unconscious. The doctor said the stair tread was rotten and broke when you stepped on it." "The stair tread rotten?" "Yes." There was something strange in Jamal's voice. "Do you remember anything? Before you fell?" I tried to search my mind, the stair, the empty space beneath my foot, then falling. "No, I just remember going down and then you fell." Jamal nodded, but something in his eyes made me uneasy. In the afternoon, Brianna came to visit. She wore a thick coat, her belly noticeably larger. In her hand was a bouquet of white carnations. "Mom," she said, her voice shaking, "I was so worried about you." "You were the one who found me?" "Yes. I woke up early to go down and make tea, and I saw you lying there." Tears welled up. "There was blood everywhere. I was scared, Mom. I was so scared." "Brianna called emergency services immediately," Jamal said, standing next to his wife. "Brianna saved you." I looked at my daughter-in-law. Her face was pale, her eyes red, but in my head, the bell rang again. The stair tread was rotten, the same step I had used for 45 years. It suddenly broke that morning. "Get some rest, Mom," Brianna said softly. "The doctor said you need time to recover." They left. I lay in the quiet room, staring at the white ceiling. An accident. That's what everyone said. But was it really an accident? On the third day, I had an unexpected visitor, Detective Howard Pierce, a tall, well-built African-American man in his 50s with sharp, observant eyes. He wore a gray suit and a badge. "Mrs. Davis, I'm Detective Pierce, New Paltz Police Department. May I ask you a few questions?" "About what?" I felt my heart tighten. "About your accident. Standard procedure when someone is seriously injured at a private residence." "Yes." "Tell me about the morning of the 28th. He opened his notebook. I recounted, waking up early, going down the stairs, the step breaking. He took notes. "Were you aware the step was damaged?" "No, it creaked, but it never had a problem." "Your son said he inspected the stairs after the accident and found the tread was rotten from the inside, not visible from the outside." "Yes." The detective looked at me for a long time. "Mrs. Davis, I want to ask you directly. Do you feel safe at home?" My heart pounded. "Why do you ask that?" He pulled out a few photos. "This is a picture of the stair step. Do you see this part?" His finger pointed to a spot on the wooden step. "These saw marks. They are not due to natural decay. Someone deliberately weakened that step from underneath." I looked at the photo, chilled to the bone. Clear saw marks, cleverly hidden beneath a thin layer of wood. Someone tried to kill me? I cannot conclude that yet. He was cautious. But it certainly wasn't an accident. Someone intentionally weakened that step. Who do you think it is? That's what I need your help with. Who had access to the stairs? Who knew you came down to the kitchen early every morning? I thought of the people in the house, Jamal, my son, and Brianna. Mrs. Davis? He prompted. Do you have anyone in mind? I hesitated. If I voiced my suspicion without proof, Brianna would deny it, and I could lose my son. I don't know, I finally answered. The detective looked at me, knowing I was hiding something. If you know, you must tell me. This is not minor. Someone tried to kill you, and they might try again. That night, I tossed and turned. The hallway light cast strange shadows on the wall. I thought about the detective's words, saw marks, intentional, planned. I thought about Brianna, the therapy sessions, the tears, the apologies. Was it all just an act? I thought about her finding me, calling emergency services, crying and worrying, playing the role of the good daughter-in-law. But what if she was the one who sawed the step? What if she waited for me to fall, then saved me so no one would suspect? I remembered her saying on the cliff, I learned from crime shows on TV. Most criminals get caught because they rush. But I'm patient. Patient. She was playing a long game, slowly pushing me toward death without anyone suspecting. What should I do? The next morning, Mabel came to visit. She brought a bag of homemade food, chicken soup, fresh bread. Hospital food is terrible, she said, opening the container. You need nutrition to recover. I told her about Detective Pierce, about the saw marks on the step. Mabel's face turned pale. That bitch. Sister. Sorry, but I don't know what else to call her. She stood up, looking out the window. She tried to kill you twice. This time she almost succeeded. You can't go back to that house. But I don't have proof that Brianna did it. Who else? Jamal would never hurt you. It can only be her. If I accuse her without proof, I lose my son. And if you stay silent, you will die. Mabel turned back, gripping my shoulders. Laverne, you have to choose, your life or your relationship with Jamal. Tears streamed down my face. Why do I have to choose? Why can't I have both? Because life isn't fair, dear. Mabel's voice softened. You know that. In the afternoon, Jamal came. He brought a photo album of old pictures. We flipped through each one, touching the memories. This is when I was 5. Jamal pointed to a photo. You took me to the park. I climbed the swing too high, scared to death. You stood below saying, Jump, I'll catch you. I trusted you and jumped. You caught me. I remember. I smiled through my tears. You've always caught me, Jamal said softly. My whole life. Now it's my turn to catch you. You are, dear. No, Mom. He looked at me seriously. I know something is going on. I'm not stupid. Detective Pierce talked about the saw marks. Someone hurt you. My heart pounded. Who do you think it is? Jamal was silent for a long time. I don't know. But I will find out. I promise you. I looked into his eyes, which were exactly like Otis's, and saw a burning determination. Son, I said, sometimes the truth can hurt. What are you trying to say? I held his hand. I want to say, no matter what the truth is, I always love you. And you must remember, those who do bad things, sometimes they are in pain too. Jamal looked at me for a long time and nodded. I understand. But I wondered, would he truly understand when facing the truth about his own wife? I stayed in the hospital for another week. Each day my body recovered slightly, but my mind grew increasingly uneasy. I knew I couldn't hide forever. Sooner or later, I had to confront Brianna, and this time, I needed evidence. On the 8th day, Detective Howard Pierce returned. He carried a transparent plastic bag. "Mrs. Davis, I need you to confirm this." He took out a small handsaw, its blade still bearing wood dust. "We found this in the garden shed. Do you recognize it?" I looked closely. "That's my husband Otis's saw. He used it for gardening. I haven't touched it since he passed away." "The sawdust on the blade matches the wood sample from the stair step," Pierce said succinctly. "Someone used this exact saw to weaken the step." "What about fingerprints?" "Yes." He paused, his eyes serious. "We found the fingerprints of your daughter-in-law, Brianna Davis." Even though I suspected it, hearing the confirmation made me reel. "Are you sure?" "Sure, but there's a problem." He pulled up a chair. When questioned, she said she used the saw a few weeks ago to cut branches in the garden. Jamal confirmed it. He saw her gardening. So it doesn't prove she used the saw to weaken the stair. A lawyer would argue the fingerprints came from legitimate gardening work. I slumped. She gets away with it? Not necessarily. The detective looked directly at me. I believe you. 25 years on the force, I know when someone is lying. Your daughter-in-law is hiding something. But to catch her, I need more than fingerprints. I need motive, opportunity, and ideally, a confession. How can I get that? You can help me. You mentioned you documented everything Brianna did. Where is the notebook? At home, hidden under my mattress. When you are discharged, retrieve it and bring it to me. And, he hesitated, if you are brave enough, I need you to do one more thing. What? Confront her. But this time, it will be recorded. I was discharged on December 10th. Jamal drove me home. The silence during the drive was unusual. Is something wrong? I asked. No, Mom. I'm just worried about you. But I knew it was more than that. The way he gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight. Jamal was thinking something. Arriving home, Brianna stood at the door, wearing a large blue maternity dress. Mom, you're back! She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. I've prepared your room, a softer mattress. I put a call bell next to the bed. Press it if you need anything. Thank you, dear. I let Jamal help me inside. Everything was the same, yet different. The stairs had been repaired, the broken step replaced with shiny new wood. But just looking at it, I heard the sound of breaking bone again. Go rest, Mom, Brianna said. I'll make dinner. I said I needed to use the restroom, then quietly detoured into Brianna and Jamal's room. My heart pounding, I knelt and lifted the mattress to find the notebook. It wasn't there. I searched everywhere. Drawers, closet, under the bed. Still nothing. The door opened. Brianna stood at the threshold, holding the black notebook. Are you looking for this, Mom? Her voice was feather light. I stood up, trying to stay composed. That belongs to me. I know. She walked in, closing the door. I found it while you were in the hospital. I read the whole thing, every page. Then you know I suspect you. Suspect? Brianna laughed, a joyless sound. You didn't just suspect. You documented everything like an investigator, every detail, every conversation. She opened the notebook and read, October 21st. Brianna suggested meeting a lawyer to arrange the will. She wants me dead. I didn't write exactly that. Yes, you did. Right here. She held out the notebook. And many other things. You think I'm a murderer? Are you? The silence was heavy as stone. Brianna put the notebook down and walked to the window. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. I don't know who I am anymore, she finally said. Sometimes I'm Brianna, the girl who just wants a family, wants to be loved. Sometimes I'm someone else, full of anger, full of jealousy, wanting to destroy everything. Did you saw the stair step? Brianna didn't turn around. I don't remember. But that morning, I woke up, my hands covered in sawdust. I knew I had done something terrible. Why didn't you stop me from going down the stairs? Because a part of me wanted you to fall. Her voice trembled. Wanted it all to end. But when I saw you lying there, blood everywhere, I panicked. I thought I had killed you. And in that moment, I realized, I don't want that. I'm not a monster. I walked closer. Brianna, you need help. More than Dr. Morrison can give. I know. She turned around, her face soaked with tears. Will you tell the police? I don't know yet. If you tell them, I'll go to jail. I'll give birth in prison. The baby won't have a mother like me when I was little. She placed a hand on her stomach. I don't want that for my child. So what do you want me to do? Forgive me. Brianna knelt down, a gesture of surrender. Please forgive me. I'll get treatment. Go anywhere. Do anything. But don't take my baby away from me. I looked at the woman in front of me, the one who almost killed me, but also a mother about to give birth, and felt my heart tear in two. I need to think, I finally said. That night, I didn't sleep. Lying in the room with the new lock, Jamal had just replaced it, I considered the two paths. Tell the police, Brianna gets arrested, gives birth in prison, Jamal is heartbroken, the baby is marked by guilt. Stay silent. Will I be safe? Is Brianna truly changed, or is she just waiting for an opportunity? At 2 a.m., the phone vibrated. An unfamiliar number. Hello? Mrs. Davis, this is Detective Pierce. I apologize for calling so late, but you need to know this immediately. What is it? We just ran a deeper background check on Brianna. She changed her name. Her real name is Brianna Cole. I know. That was her surname before marrying Jamal. No, I mean legally changed. In 2019, she changed from Brianna Jean Cole to Brianna Marie Cole. Do you know why? No. Because in 2018, Brianna Jean Cole was arrested in Philadelphia for battery. The victim was her mother-in-law from her first marriage. My blood ran cold. First marriage? Correct. She was married to Marcus Cole. They divorced after 18 months. The reason? Marcus accused Brianna of poisoning his mother. The elderly woman survived but was hospitalized for 3 weeks. Not enough evidence to prosecute. But there's a precedent, I whispered. Exactly. Your daughter-in-law is more dangerous than we thought. You must leave the house. Right now. The next morning I told Jamal everything. The notebook, the conversation with Brianna, Detective Pierce's 2 a.m. phone call. We sat at the dining table, the morning sun streaming through the window. Jamal listened silently, his face growing paler with each detail. No, he finally said. It can't be. Son, I know it's hard to believe. It's not hard to believe. It's impossible. Jamal jumped up, pacing back and forth. Brianna can't do that. She's pregnant. She's about to be a mother. Someone like that can't be a killer. But the evidence to... What evidence? Fingerprints on a saw? She said she used it for gardening. And your notebook? It's all speculation. He turned to me. Do you think you might be overreacting? Overreacting? I couldn't believe my ears. Son, I almost died. It was an accident. Old stairs, rotten wood. It just happened. What about the previous marriage? The accusation of poisoning her mother-in-law? Jamal froze. You talked to Detective Pierce behind my back? Son, I'm worried about you. No. He shook his head. You're not worried about me. You're jealous. Since I married Brianna, you've never accepted her. You look for faults, criticize, make her feel like she's never good enough. That's not true. It is true. Jamal's voice rose. Now, when she is truly a part of this family, when we are about to have a baby, you want to destroy everything, because you can't stand the fact that I love someone else as much as you. Those words stabbed straight into my heart. You think I made all this up? I don't know. Jamal collapsed onto the chair, burying his face in his hands. I just know I can't lose her. I love her, Mom. And son, my voice trembled. Do you love me? Jamal looked up, his eyes red. You know I do. But why are you forcing me to choose? The entire following week, the atmosphere in the house was tense. Jamal avoided me, speaking only when absolutely necessary. Brianna acted as if nothing had happened, busy preparing for the baby's arrival. I felt like an outsider in my own home. On December 20th, everything changed again. I was sitting in the living room reading a book when I heard an argument upstairs. Jamal's and Brianna's voices were so loud that every word was clear. You talked to Marcus? Brianna's voice was sharp. Yes, I called your ex-husband. You had no right. I have the right to know the truth. Jamal roared. Marcus told me everything. About his mother, about you putting sleeping pills in her tea. She almost died from the overdose. No one could prove it. Because you covered it up cleverly, just like now. Silence. Then, did you saw the stair step? Honey, don't lie anymore. Smash. The sound of something breaking. Probably a vase. You tried to kill my mother. You wanted to take away the only woman who loved me unconditionally. Because of that very thing, Brianna cried. Because no one loves me that way. No one. Your mother was always in the middle. I just wanted you to love only me. Only me. Love doesn't work that way, Brianna. I can love both you and my mother. But you love her more. Brianna's voice faded. You always love her more. Rapid footsteps pounded down the stairs. Jamal appeared, his face ravaged. He looked at me. In his eyes was an unbearable pain. You were right, Mom, he said softly but firmly. You were right about her. Brianna slowly descended the stairs, one hand on the railing, the other clutching her belly. Her face was swollen from crying, her eyes red. Most frightening was the blank look, as if she had given up on everything. Jamal, she choked out. I'm sorry. Jamal didn't look at her. Sorry isn't enough, Brianna. I know. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs, a few steps away from us. I'll go. I'll leave here. You won't have to see me again. Go where? Jamal asked. To do what? Find another man and ruin his life? No. Brianna shook her head. I'll go back to my mother's. I'll have the baby there, alone. You think I'll let you take my child away? The question startled Brianna. It's my baby. It's my child, too, and I won't let a woman who tried to kill my mother raise my child. I stood up, putting a hand on his shoulder. Jamal, everyone needs to calm down. This is not the time to decide things like that. No, Mom. Jamal turned to me. This is exactly the time. You almost died, and I have to choose. My family, or the woman who betrayed everything. Brianna instinctively placed her hand over her abdomen, as if protecting the baby. I'll change. I promise. I'll continue seeing Dr. Rachel Morrison. I'll take medication if I need to. I'll do anything. Like last time? Jamal's voice was ice cold. You apologized to my mother, and a week later, my mother was hospitalized with broken bones. I wasn't conscious when I did it. That's not an excuse. Jamal punched the wall, leaving a dent. You knew you had problems, knew you were dangerous, but you stayed here. You still accessed my mother. You still had the opportunity to hurt her. Brianna slumped onto the step, sobbing hysterically. I don't know what to do. I'm afraid of losing you. I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of everything. Looking at her, a complex emotion welled up in me, neither hate nor pity, but a profound sadness, sorrow for a woman whose childhood wounds had warped her to the point where she didn't know how to love properly, sorrow for my son over his ruined marriage, and sorrow for the unborn baby who would come into the world amidst these shards. Jamal, I said softly. I want to talk to Brianna. Alone. He looked at me as if he couldn't believe his ears. What did you say? Alone, son. Trust me. Jamal hesitated, then nodded. I'll be upstairs. If you need. I know. Once Jamal was gone, I pulled a chair and sat facing Brianna. She looked up, her eyes swollen. Are you going to call the police? She asked. I don't know yet, I answered truthfully. But first, I want you to answer one question. Honestly. What question? Do you love Jamal? Truly love him? Brianna was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was a whisper. I'm not sure I understand what love is. No one ever taught me when I was little. My mother was always busy. My sisters fended for themselves. I grew up thinking love was possession, being sure no one could take the person you love away. That's not love, Brianna. That's fear. I know. Dr. Morrison said the same thing. But I don't know any other way. She looked down at her belly. Now I'm about to have a baby. Am I going to pass that sickness on to it? No, not if you genuinely seek help. Not just a few weeks of therapy, but a long-term commitment to change. Brianna looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Do you think I can change? I think you can, if you truly want to. But not here, not with me and Jamal. You want me to leave? I want you to heal. And you can't do that in this environment, where every day you have to face what you did and the people you hurt. Brianna nodded slowly. So what about the baby? What does that mean? That was the question that had plagued me during those sleepless nights. I think, I chose my words carefully, you should have the baby, and then take time for real treatment. 6 months, maybe a year. During that time, Jamal will care for our grandchild. Once you are stable and can prove you are safe, we will discuss custody. A year without seeing my child? Tears rolled down Brianna's cheeks. A year to become the mother you want to be. It's not a punishment, Brianna. It's a gift. Time to heal. That afternoon, Detective Howard Pierce arrived. We sat in the living room, me, Jamal, Brianna, and him. Mrs. Davis has given me a summary, the detective said, looking at Brianna. Miss Cole, do you wish to make a formal statement? Brianna looked at me, then at Jamal. If I confess, will I go to jail? It depends, Pierce replied. If you cooperate fully, seek therapy voluntarily, the court may consider alternative measures, such as mandatory treatment at a psychiatric facility instead of prison. And the baby? That falls under family court jurisdiction. But if you demonstrate active commitment to treatment, you have an opportunity for visitation and later, possibly co-parenting. Brianna was silent for a very long time. Finally, she nodded. I'll make a statement. I'll tell the truth. And she did. For 2 hours, Brianna recounted everything. The plan on the cliff, sawing the stair step, the pills she took. Everything was recorded and documented. When she finished, Pierce stood up. Ms. Cole, I am not arresting you immediately due to your pregnancy. But you will need a lawyer. And after the birth, you will have to face the court. I understand, Brianna said. That evening, the three of us sat around the dinner table in a strange silence. Brianna cooked dinner, her last meal in this house, chicken soup and bread. Tomorrow, I'm going back to my mother's, she said. My mother agreed to take me in, to wait until the birth. Jamal nodded, saying nothing. Honey, Brianna gently held her husband's hand. I know I destroyed everything, but I want you to know, even though I did terrible things, my feelings for you were real. Maybe it wasn't love in the right sense, but it was my best attempt. Jamal withdrew his hand. I also want you to know, I loved you, the person I thought you were. But that person perhaps never existed. She did, Brianna insisted. She existed. She was just buried under too much pain. I will find her again. I promise. The next morning, Brianna's sister, Mabel Carter, came to pick her up, a small woman with a tired but resolute face who resembled Brianna in her persistent gaze. "She'll be fine," Mabel Carter told me when Brianna went inside to get her things. "My family isn't perfect, but we'll take care of her, and the baby." "Thank you." Brianna came back down with a small suitcase. She stopped in front of me. "Mom Laverne," she said, "I'm sorry." I know those 2 words aren't enough, but I want you to know, you taught me an important lesson. You showed me what real love looks like. Even when I wanted to hurt you, you still tried to save me. I will never forget that. I hugged her, lightly, because of her large belly. Go heal, Brianna. For yourself, for the baby, and for the people you will meet later. I will try. Then she left. I stood at the door, watching the small car disappear down the snowy road. Jamal stood beside me. "Do you think you did the right thing, Mom?" "I don't know," I said truthfully, "but I hope so." He hugged me, a tight hug, full of love and pain. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you." "I understand, son." "You loved her, and love is easily blinded. Do you still love me? After everything?" I looked into my son's eyes, exactly like Otis's. "Son, I will love you until my last breath. That will never change." We stood there, embracing in the falling snow, 2 survivors of the storm. Christmas arrived in silence. No Christmas tree, no colored lights, and no noisy parties. Just Jamal and me, sitting by the fireplace watching the flickering flames. "Around this time last year," Jamal said, his voice distant, "Dad was alive. Brianna was still the girl I loved. Everything was normal." "Normal is just an illusion, son," I replied. "We think things are normal because we haven't looked closely enough." The phone rang. Mabel Carter, Brianna's sister, called. "Hello, Mrs. Davis. I'm calling to let you know. Brianna is in labor. We're on our way to the hospital." My heart constricted. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, but in a lot of pain." "I'll keep you updated, okay?" I looked at Jamal. In my son's eyes was a struggle, wanting to see his child, but afraid to face Brianna. "Do you want to go?" I asked softly. Jamal was silent for a long time. "I want to see my child, but I don't know if I can look at her face." I returned to the phone. "Yes, please call when the baby is born." At 2 a.m., December 26th, a baby boy was born. 3.2 kilograms, healthy, crying loudly. Mabel sent a photo, a baby with dark hair, Jamal's nose bridge, and lips like Brianna's. Jamal looked at the photo, and in the dark room, I heard my son's sobs. "That's my child," he whispered, tears falling. "My son." I held Jamal, letting him cry on my shoulder like when he was a child, crying for loss, for joy, for the heartbreaking complexity of life. "We're going to see our grandson," I said. At dawn, we drove to Vassar Brothers Medical Center. The sky changed from black to gray to pale pink. Snow covered both sides of the road, a deceptive serenity. Mabel met us in the lobby. "Brianna is sleeping. She's exhausted. The baby is in the nursery, waiting for you both." We walked through the sterile white hallway, the smell of disinfectant mixed with the scent of congratulatory flowers. From afar, a baby's cries echoed. In front of the large glass window, Jamal stopped. Behind the glass were bassinets, each one a new beginning. "Here," Mabel pointed to a bassinet in the corner of the room. The card read, "Baby Boy Davis." Jamal placed his hand on the glass. "He's perfect." Nurse Sienna Patel, the nurse who had cared for me after the fall, smiled when she recognized me. "Mrs. Davis? Nice to see you under better circumstances. Would you like to hold your grandson?" She looked at Jamal. He just nodded, unable to speak. Sienna brought the baby out, carefully placing him in Jamal's arms. "Congratulations, sir. This is your son." Jamal sat down, holding the child to his chest. The baby opened his eyes, the exact deep brown of Otis's, and looked at his father. "Hello, son," Jamal whispered, his voice choked. "I'm Jamal. I will take care of you. No matter what happens, I'm here." I stood watching, my son holding his child, and felt something break and mend in my chest. "Would you like to hold him, Mom?" Jamal asked. I took the baby, light, warm, smelling of colostrum and new life. The baby stirred in my arms and then grew quiet, as if knowing he was safe. "Hello, grandson," I said softly, tears falling. "I'm Laverne." "I'll tell you about your grandfather, the best man I ever knew. You carry his name, Otis Jamal Davis, a name carrying love." "Would you like to see Brianna?" Mabel asked quietly. Jamal looked at me. I looked back. In his eyes was the question, "Are we ready?" "Maybe just one person," I said. "I'll go in." Jamal nodded, still holding little Otis. Brianna lay in bed, looking out the window. The dawn light shone on her pale face. Hearing footsteps, she turned. Seeing me, her eyes widened. "Mom!" "Dear," I walked toward her. "I came to visit." "Jamal, did he come?" "Yes, he's holding Otis." Hearing her son's name, Brianna burst into tears. Is he healthy?" "Healthy. Perfect." I sat down next to the bed. "You did very well." "I gave birth to him," she trembled, "but I don't deserve to be a mother." "You will deserve it," I said, "but not right now. Right now, what you need is to heal." "Riverside Mental Health Center accepted me," she said. "I'm going next week. 6 months inpatient. Therapy every day, medication, learning how to self-regulate. No going out, no phone calls, except for emergencies." "Are you scared?" "Terrified." Brianna looked at me. "But I'm more scared of not doing this. I'm afraid of looking back one day and seeing myself destroy everyone I love." I squeezed her hand. "You are doing the right thing." "Mom," she gripped my hand, "I don't dare ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know, you taught me how to love. Not with words, but with actions. Even when I wanted to harm you, you still gave me a chance. I will carry that with me forever." "Brianna," I said slowly, "I won't say I completely forgive you. The wound is still there, but I choose not to let it turn me bitter, and I hope you will also learn to forgive yourself to move forward." "Can I see Otis from afar?" I promised not to go near, just to stand and look. I thought for a moment and then nodded. "Yes, only from afar." We walked to the nursery window. Jamal was still holding Otis, his back to us. Brianna placed her hand on the glass, looking at her son with a mixture of pain and love. "He's beautiful," she whispered. "He looks like Jamal. He looks like you, too." "I hope he looks more like Jamal." Brianna turned. "Will you tell him about me? When he grows up?" "I will tell him his mother loved him enough to give him a better start, and that some people, even when they make mistakes, can change." Brianna nodded, tears streaming down. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." As I left the room, I glanced back. Brianna was still standing there, her hand glued to the glass, looking at the child she wouldn't be able to hold for many months. A mother learning to love by letting go. That day, we took Otis home. Maple Street, the house once filled with pain, opened its doors to a new life. Jamal placed the baby in the bassinet he himself had slept in 35 years ago. Little Otis yawned, stretched, and fell sound asleep. "Mom," Jamal stood by the bassinet. "I'm sorry for everything. For not believing you, for letting you get hurt. Don't apologize anymore, son." I stood next to him. We survived the storm. Now is the time to rebuild. Do you think one day Brianna might come back? Not as my wife, but as Otis's mother? I looked at the sleeping baby. I don't know. No one can predict the future, but if she truly changes, proves she's safe, then perhaps a child deserves to know their mother. And if she doesn't change, then Otis will grow up with his father and grandmother, people who love him unconditionally, and that is enough. Retention beat, approximately 42:30. Quick cuts, the Riverside admission form, a dense therapy schedule, a bright white therapy room, transition back to Maple Street, bassinet, blankets, bottles, the sound of a baby's laughter. Overlay. Healing doesn't erase the past. Healing is learning how to live with it. 6 months later, one summer afternoon, we received the first letter from Brianna. I opened the letter as Jamal played with Otis on the lawn in the garden. The child's laughter was crystal clear like silver bells. The letter was handwritten, the handwriting steadier than before. Dear Mom, Laverne and Jamal, today marks 6 months since I entered Riverside, 6 months without outbursts, 6 months of learning to live with myself. They say I'm making progress. I'm learning to recognize toxic thoughts before they become actions. I'm learning that love is not possession, and I'm learning forgiveness, not just for others, but for myself. I don't expect things to be as they were, because they can't be. I only hope that one day, when I prove I've changed, I can meet Otis, not as a full-time mother, just as someone in his life, loving him from afar. Thank you for giving me a chance to live, and thank you for raising my son. With gratitude, Brianna. I folded the letter, placing it in the drawer next to the old family photos. One day when Otis grows up, he will read it and understand his mother, imperfect, but brave enough to look within and change. Through the window I saw Jamal tossing a ball for Otis. Though the baby was only 6 months old, he only knew how to giggle. The afternoon sun poured onto the garden, where Otis, my husband, once nurtured life, where now 3 generations shared memories. I thought about everything, the fall, the injury, the betrayal, but I also thought about what remained, love, forgiveness, and hope. Life is not a fairy tale. There is no perfect happy ending. There are only new beginnings, where we learn to live with our scars, love despite the pain, and believe tomorrow can be kinder than today. I walked down to the garden, sitting next to Jamal. Otis crawled over, grasping my finger with his tiny hand. Grandson, I told the child, I will tell you a story about a family that was broken and found a way to mend, about people who made mistakes and learned to do right, and about love, something that can be hurt, but if we are patient enough, brave enough, it will heal. Otis laughed, not understanding yet, but one day he will understand, and that will be the gift I leave behind, not a story of perfection, but a story of resilience. Not about never falling, but about always getting back up. That is the legacy of the Davis family.